This is Popping the Bubble with hosts Sandra Ponce de Leon and Pete A. Turner.
This is Matt Greeley. I am the founder and CEO of Brightidea, and we are on Popping the Bubble.
Hey, Matt. Thank you so much for joining us here on our podcast. It's awesome to have you.
Great to see you again, Sandra.
Yeah, thanks for being here.
Yeah, full disclosure, I used to work at Brightidea, and I love the company. I love what you guys do. So it's really exciting to actually be able to talk to you and get your message out to the masses.
And we miss you dearly.
So, Matt, I guess like the way that I'd love to start is just hearing your journey as a startup founder, because Brightidea has been around now for, I think, 10 years?
16 years.
16 years? That's even longer than I thought. Oh my gosh, here I was saying 10. So do you still consider yourself a startup?
We do. You know, the innovation geeks out there will know that there's a guy by the name of Steve Blank, and he says a startup is an organization founded to search for a scalable and repeatable business model. And we chose a really hard problem to get after. We chose the problem of trying to help big companies innovate, and that's really difficult. And it's even more difficult to do in a scalable and repeatable way. So we are still tuning the formula. I think we're sort of at that tipping point. Got some great customers. They're using a standard solution, but in the early days, it was just chaos. We were kind of more of a consulting firm than a product company.
Right. Yeah. How did you come to build a solution for a problem that you knew was out there? Because now innovation is this huge buzzword. Everyone's doing it. There's all sorts of experts. But back 16 years ago, was anyone doing anything in innovation?
It was, not much.
Or was it called R&D?
It was called R&D. The idea for Brightidea was really very simple. We started with the concept that innovation, I love innovation. I love creativity. I love new ideas. I think it's the closest thing we can do as humans to like real magic, right? Because you like do something and all of a sudden the world's a better place and you can make money and all this other stuff. It's like wizardry. So I've always loved creativity and new ideas. Back in 99, 2000, everyone was just doing the internet plus X, right? So it was like the internet to sell books or the internet to, sell ads or something like that. And I was like, well, I love creativity and new ideas. How about the internet plus ideas, the internet plus brainstorming? And it turns out that, most people believe innovation happens when you connect the dots. So we've all seen the roller luggage, which is really a combination of a suitcase and like a hand truck that someone would deliver beer with. You combine those two things and you have this whole new category that gets created, and all of a sudden everyone has this thing and you can't even find your luggage at the airport because it just takes off so quickly.
And now there's a smart luggage and the luggage that you can ride on the way to the terminal.
Yeah, my idea for that is to have a little like a droid from Star Wars where it just follows you. You don't even have to drag
there
it
is
with
that.
you.
That
Oh,
exists.
really?
That exists.
Oh,
I'm going to show you the company.
Okay.
I know them.
We'll put it in the show notes. I was just thinking about that and I was like, man, so if the internet's about connecting the dots and the internet is going to connect everyone and everything, it just makes logical sense to me that the internet's going to have a role to play in the future of innovation. And so we started working on it, and we ran the first ever crowdsourcing challenge in 2000. We were working with Sears Kenmore. We got 3,000 soccer moms to tell us how they would improve the refrigerator. And it was, crowdsourcing ideas from all these real world people.
And did that actually come to be a new product?
They did. They integrated some of the ideas into their design. So there were some really cool ideas. There was someone said make a coffee table that has a refrigerator in it. Somebody said put a lazy Susan in the thing so things don't get stuck in the back.
That's a good idea.
Yeah, there's a lot of good stuff. So what happened over the years was, as sort of the rate of change accelerated, these old companies realized they weren't really organized for innovation. They were organized for doing the same thing over and over and over again, but they weren't really well organized for doing new things every year, every quarter. They went out starting looking for ways to be more nimble, be more sort of agile, and then they started creating these teams. And we didn't even know these teams existed when we started, but they started creating these innovation teams to basically stimulate innovation within the company. So after that, we just said, how do we make that team successful? How do we, what types of tools do they need? And we started realizing they're managing a suggestion box. They're trying to, engage their internal crowds in problem solving. And more recently, they've gotten into design thinking and lean startup and running hackathons. So we've just sort of stayed close to them the whole way, stayed close to the customer, try to deliver the best tool for those innovation teams inside these companies.
Right. Yeah. And there's so many different types of innovation. So companies use acquisition as a form of innovation. You've got these crowdsource challenges. You've got there's just the types of innovation are so vast. How do you build a software that can actually meet the needs of all those diverse types of innovation processes?
It's definitely a challenge, and that's part of the reason we've been around so long, to try and crack that code. But yeah, there's lots and lots of different flavors and facets to innovation. And some people look at it as just a singular innovation process, like, oh, we'll collect ideas, we'll look at them, we'll fund some, and we'll create new products. But sort of the key insight we had a while back was that there's all these different activities, right? There's new product development, there's continuous improvement, there's patents, there's your R&D team, there's your open innovation team, there's your design thinking team, and all these teams need different tools to drive innovation. So basically, we started building an architecture that would allow us to build different tools, and that's really what gives us our advantage, or our secret sauce, if you will, is that we built this architecture that's really flexible. So whether you're running a crowdsourcing challenge, or you're running a hackathon, or you're setting up an incubator pipeline within a business unit, we've got this workflow and this social crowd engine on the front of it that really allows you to effectuate that process and get results. And we track things all the way through to the time where a company records financial projections and financial outcomes on the ideas. So yeah, it was a lot of work, kind of getting pulled in a bunch of different directions. Even for a particular use case like new product development, if you go into pharmaceutical, that might take 12 years. If you go into a startup, that might take 12 minutes. So building an architecture that could support that is really the key technical challenge. And that's really what we've been spending most of our time on.
Very cool.
You just used the word effectuate. I've never heard that in a podcast before. I had to look it up to make sure it was really a word, but it totally makes sense.
You did.
To put in motion. Fantastic. I love it.
I always try and make myself sound cool, but it never works.
It didn't. When it comes to innovation, is it a thing? Is it something that's going to be called something else and move away from what you guys are trying to build?
We've heard that over the years, and people said I remember when we were 3 people in a little office, and people said, "Oh, innovation is a buzzword," and it seems like it still is a buzzword, but it seems like a durable buzzword.
It's even more of a buzzword now.
Yeah, there's a bunch of different flavors. I think another trend you're seeing around these days is digital transformation, and you have like the Deloittes and the McKinseys and the Accentures that are going in and coaching these companies on how to transform themselves for the 21st century. So I think there'll be, there's a lot of sub names for it. Like I said, continuous improvement or product management or whatever. There's a lot of sub names for innovation. But what's interesting about digital transformation, I think, is we work with General Electric. I love talking about General Electric because they basically won the 20th century. I mean, they were one of the top 5 or 10 companies. Massive, game-changing innovation, build the electrical grid, build the lights, build, power stations and everything, and came out on top, right? Even as the century clicked, they're still in the top 10 or 20. But they realized that they need to fully transform their company to be more like Google and Facebook if they're going to succeed in the 21st century. And that's almost, I think that's harder than actually being Facebook or Google, right? Because you gotta say out with the old and in with the new, and that's harder than just in with the new. But to their credit, they're doing it. Beth Comstock is amazing. She's a vice chairman there, and she's been out in front on all this stuff and digital transformation, and they just get it, and they get that it requires experimentation, and there's a level of courage and risk taking there that you don't often see in these big companies. Yeah, I think innovation comes in many different flavors and colors, and like I said, digital transformation is just sort of a brother by another name. But there's a lot of work to do to transform our economy. This election, as we were just talking about before we started, was the Rust Belt, really the sort of disenfranchised, white workers in the Rust Belt really turned the election, and they were being left behind. It's, all this sort of free trade across borders, and It's a different problem to solve if we're going to go in there and come up with new products and new services that can employ all these people, put them back to work, get the economy growing again, not just 2% growth, but real GDP growth. I feel really fortunate to be at sort of ground zero of that, because we work with these big companies, and we're not just working with Facebook and Google and Apple and Uber and Airbnb. We're working with GE and Honeywell and stuff like that. So, old line firms. So, they need help. They need help. They need to do new things, and they need to transform themselves so that they can be competitive in this century.
Right. Yeah. And at the same time, there's new innovation that's actually disrupting, that's becoming disruptive in and of itself, like the, coming of the autonomous vehicles. And you're talking about how to, maybe, focus in the Rust Belt to other types of things. But, they've got this new technology that's coming that's going to disrupt us even more. Sure. In terms of automation.
Yeah. There's no shortage of disruption. I don't know if you guys have seen this chart. There's a chart of how long companies stay in the S&P 500. And it used to be, in the 1950s, if you got on there, you're probably stick around for 60 years on average. So,
right.
That's the whole Gold Watch program and all that. Now we're down to like the teens, 15 years and trending towards like 13 years. So it's harder than ever to stay on top. I believe there's still real innovation out there. I believe, we have to take on hard problems. We have to, harder problems than we ever have before. And you guys see here in our office, we have all these rockets that say, think bigger. There's a 40-foot rocket next to us as we speak. When Elon Musk is saying he's going to send people to Mars for $200,000 in 2020, like, that idea you had 5 years ago and you thought was a big idea, it's probably not a big idea anymore. You gotta, because of this exponential rate of change, you really gotta think, like, you really gotta stretch your mind to think as big as you possibly can. And then maybe that idea has enough legs to last for 5 or 10 years while you execute against it. So I think there's, we've been through these transitions before. We've been through a transition from the agricultural society to basically a services-based economy. If it takes too long, it can lead to some unrest and whatnot. The key is to just put all of our attention on the new, stop fighting the old, and, come up with the new products and services that can put these people back to work.
Mm-hmm. When you talk about innovation and this pace that we're going at, and Elon Musk not only taking people to Mars, but bringing them back, like this is really...
Is he going to bring them back? Is that part of the plan?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Not just going.
It's a shuttle. He's got a whole shuttle program.
It's crazy. Yeah. But these folks in the Rust Belt who want to make America great again, this isn't a political commentary. It's just, they've got a different mindset on what normal is and what possible is. Mm-hmm. Are we going to see an elastic kind of growth where the innovation just outpaces everybody so much that there's disruption in the innovation, because it's just the people who are left behind count?
Sure. I'm a, sort of unrepentant optimist, and I think innovation solves a lot of problems. I think growth solves a lot of problems. And, those people can just as well do high-tech, materials as they can, bend, old school steel into bumpers and stuff like that. At the end of the day, manufacturing, let's face it, you tell people what to do and they execute that. So the problem is there's been a dearth of what to do. And there's been a lot of innovation in the bits side of things, the digital side of things. Mm-hmm. There's been less in, core material science, core physics, these types of things, electronics. It was one of the saddest things I ever saw. I went out to visit a group at Honeywell, and it was Honeywell Grimes, and it was in Ohio, and they brought us in, and I felt like a doctor where the patient was just too far gone.
Really?
Like you could just feel it, and we were trying everything we could, and the gal we were talking to said she lays people off, and then she has to go meet the wife of the person in the supermarket down the street, and it's really, really painful stuff. And all it takes is new ideas. You put yourself out 10 years, 20 years, 30 years. Like, are we going to come up with new stuff? It's of course we are. Of course we are.
Right.
Now we got to make sure we come up with it, not China or someone else. But you got to have a new idea. If you have a new idea, then you have nothing to fear. But these guys were making lights that go on the bottom of airplanes, and that business, I guess, moved offshore or something. But to move up the stack, better design, better engineering, higher tech, and autonomous vehicles is an area. Obviously, artificial intelligence is an area. And, I don't think everyone has to be the person writing the artificial intelligence algorithm, we're going to put artificial intelligence and cognition into light switches and into thermostats and into,
I think that already exists.
Everything.
The IoT. Yeah.
Exactly. Mm-hmm. So we need, I think there is something in Trump's message about not leaving people behind. And, it's like when you want to go to the party, but your body doesn't want to go, like the body vetoes going to the party, you're in your mind and your heart, you want to go, but you don't get to go. I think there's an element of that. We want to go and do free trade, and we want to go do all these high tech things, but we gotta bring our people along, and we are one country. I don't like this coastal elites, and it's just another division that people are trying to press upon us. And we are one country. Those people, made America great when Detroit was the motor city. And I think we're smart enough to come up with new products, new things, physical and digital, that'll get those people back to work and doing higher value added activities.
Yeah, exactly. No, that's a very positive take on our state of affairs.
It can happen. You just need more innovation.
Yeah, absolutely. And so, speaking of innovation, how do you make sure that you're infusing innovation into your company and to Brightidea? What do you do to keep that new thinking, that new creativity going on a regular basis?
Well, there's lots of stuff that we do. We, of course, eat our own dog food. We drink our own champagne. So our customers give us ideas 24/7 through our platform. We have our internal teams use the Brightidea platform for ideas. When we run a hackathon, we host a hackathon on there. So it's very much embedded into our culture to use this platform so that we're squeezing the best ideas out of our people and our ecosystem. But there's a cultural element too. We look for A players, we look for the best and the brightest. We try and give those people space to do their thing. And, just philosophically, we just try and remind ourselves that there's always an adjacent possible. I know that's a geeky phrase to say, but I see
you looking for a whiteboard.
That's my natural state. We have an old school typewriter in our lobby. It's a Underwood model, and which was the first mass-produced typewriter. If you look at the history of the typewriter, it's really fascinating because it didn't just pop out completed. Right now everyone knows what a typewriter is, but they call that in innovation jargon the dominant design. So, that we have the QWERTY keyboard, the space bar, and everything. For a while, people were still trying to figure out what a typewriter should be, and there was a lot of product innovation going on. So there were things like the first typewriters only typed in all capital letters.
Really?
So, yeah. And some people wanted mixed case, so they had two sets of keys. They had two A keys, two B keys, two C keys. The keyboard was twice as wide. And then someone invented the shift key. They invented a button that actually just shifted the whole carriage up a half a line, and then you got the other character. Someone invented the bell that meant you typed too far and the lever to get it back. Even visible type was an innovation. When they built the first machines that could produce the type, you were literally punching the keys down into the paper, and you didn't get to see what you wrote for another like 15 lines or 30 lines when it came out the bottom. So I think it's important sometimes to look backwards to be able to see forwards. And when you're staring at that typewriter and those things haven't been invented, you just have to assume there's a better way. You have to assume that what the customer wants, mixed case or visible type, is possible, and how do we do it? And I think just keeping that perspective is really, really healthy, because in everything we do, these headphones I have on, or my iPhone or my laptop, like in everything we do, there's something adjacent to the way we're currently doing it that can be made better. And it's kind of hard to think of a non-thing or a thing that doesn't exist, but I think that's what innovators do. They basically reach into that abyss of things that don't exist yet, and they pull things back for us, and for the benefit of all. Once something gets invented, it can be spread very widely, and it can really make people's lives better. So, I think that's what I try and support as much as I can in our company, is that, yes, we have this thing. Yes, we think it's the best in the world for what it does. Yes, it's better than every other option in every way. But it's not good enough. It's not there yet. It's not finished. We have to keep, charging, keep reaching into that abyss and finding the new ideas that we need to, whether that's in the product, how we deliver the product, how we market the product. Some people view the world through rose-colored glasses. I view it through idea and innovation-colored glasses, and I just see everything as an idea. So, a better way to market's a good idea, a better way to sell, a new feature, a new way to deliver, a way to save money on our servers because we did something more efficiently. They're all just ideas that we need to make real so that we can make the company better.
You put a term out, and I know it's common here in the Silicon Valley, but will you just really quick describe what a hackathon is?
Sure. Yeah, there's some we get some flack from this because somebody said, "Is that when a bunch of hackers get together and try and take down a company?" Like, no, that's not what it is. No, a hackathon is it's a short-term sprint, 24-hour, 48-hour that a company will host. Facebook actually popularized it, and you get your programmers to come in or your product people, and they basically just work on something, and they're trying to they're just trying to get a prototype built or something. And what most people don't realize is they think the root is hack, like to crack a computer system, but the hacking actually comes from like hacking your way through the jungle. You're just like, it's sort of these rough blows, and you're just trying to crash through and get through and clear your way. So you're basically working on a project. Oftentimes people are allowed to work on whatever project they want because they're volunteering their time, and they basically show up, and sometimes they stay overnight at the office, and they just brute force try and get through a project to a prototype. And what we find is it's a really good way of sort of activating energy inside a company, because if there's too much top down manage, everyone's like optimize, manage, right? Like cost save, and you kind of eliminate the space for that freedom, that creativity to emerge. So hackathons are a great way to kind of jumpstart an innovation initiative at a company, because you can get people to come out, they brute force, they get excited. There's usually an event with judges and a competition, awards, and at the end you've got tangible prototypes. And sometimes people work on something they've been thinking about for 3 years, right? And in the 9 to 5 and everything they had to do, and they had to drop the kids off at school, and all this stuff, it just never got done. But the hackathon gives them that opportunity to just pure focus, cut their way through the woods and through the jungle and get something done. So it's, from our perspective, it's one tool in sort of the innovation toolbox. It's a great way to kind of get a lot of energy and get things moving quickly.
Very cool. Yeah. Hackathons are fun. All-nighters also.
Yeah, lots of Red Bull, and they have caffeinated coffee beans and stuff. We just did one a little while ago.
Yeah, in my world, you'd put a dip in. I don't dip, but you'd put a dip in, and you just go out and do it. Like you back-to-back patrols, and you're like, all right, well, let's go. And you just, yeah. Absolutely,
yeah. There's a camaraderie there.
Sure.
There's a, it's some of that stuff that, you want to optimize things. You want to manage an organization well, but you don't want to squeeze it so hard that some of that, the real human creative juice gets squeezed out.
Mm-hmm, definitely. Is there any particular examples of innovation that have come out of some of your clients' usage of the Brightidea platform, or some exciting new innovation? Like, what's your favorite innovation use case or case study that you can talk about?
I'm a softie, so I tend to the things that I think immediately make the world a better place. I mean, we get all sorts of crazy stuff. We work with Brookstone, the company in the mall, and they came up with these headphones that they look like cat ears, but they have speakers in the headphones, and they sold a lot of them at Christmas. But that's
actually, I might want one of those. I like the cat ears.
So there's all that stuff. There's crazy stuff, and if it works in the market, it's a good innovation. I'm a sucker. I'm a softie for the stuff where you can really link it to making the world a better place. So we work with Celgene, which is a cancer therapy company. I was talking about them at an all hands meeting internally, and I said, raise your hand. They were just a new customer, so I'm explaining what they do to everyone, and I said, raise your hand if you or anyone has been affected by cancer. And every hand in the room went up.
Of course,
and
yeah.
I couldn't believe it. I knew a bunch would go up, and my mother actually had a breast cancer scare a few years ago, and those guys are amazingly smart people. I mean, they're looking at the pathways that have like 15 or 30 steps and all these chemical reactions, stuff I'll never even dream to know about. What I love about it is that they too realize they want to do more innovation. They want to innovate better and faster. And they get to come to us, and we get to be the experts about those processes. So I love stuff like that. A guy who's a friend of mine, he works at an auto parts company, and what I love about them is on their annual report, on the cover of their annual report, they've got an 8-year-old girl sitting in the back seat of a car, looking out the window, just kind of looking up at the trees and the birds, and And what I love about it is they make all the safety systems in the car. So they make the seat belts, the airbags, now all this radar and passive sensing systems, and that just brings it right down to it, right? Why do we have all these systems? Because your daughter's in the back seat. That's why we have these systems. And when I hear these guys, improving how a seatbelt works or improving how an airbag works, some of the stuff's really detailed. That part XYR goes into part JKL or whatever, But when I see them doing that, and they actually report their innovations, their successful innovations in their annual report, that's what gives me juice. That's what gets me up out of bed in the morning is, that again, it's like magic. You have an idea, and this all of a sudden, all these things, why our seatbelts work differently, why airbags were invented, shifting from steering wheel airbags to side curtain airbags, and now they're putting them in different places for the autonomous vehicles. I mean, it's pretty interesting. GE does all sorts of stuff, changing the way their green energy locomotives work, and so I'm not at liberty to talk too much about all the specifics. It's certainly fun to work with these customers, and there'll be a team of engineers at GE, and they're trying to do something. There's something they know they really want to do, but they're stuck. And in the past, they would just get on the whiteboard, scratch their head, maybe ask some of their colleagues, ask their manager. But with Brightidea, they can take that problem and they can broadcast it to all the engineers in the GE ecosystem. So, and engineers love that stuff, right? They love seeing problems. They love helping each other. So whereas normally this team would be on an island and no one would even know that they're stuck and they're just beating their head against the wall, now you can take that and on a Facebook like platform, spread it around and let all your engineers see it. And whether they're in Mumbai or whether they're in Berlin, they can all just start collaborating on what the potential solution might be. So we believe innovation makes the world a better place. So the more innovation there is, the better things are.
Definitely.
Yeah, this innovation thing is, well, a few blocks from here, Philo Farnsworth figured the TV out. I mean, literally that happened, just not very far from here at all.
Yep.
As we have less of a need for someone to swing a hammer or run a welder gun or whatever, we're going to have more people that can innovate. I mean, imagine what Philo had if there were 1,000 people trying to help him do this thing. You know, if he had a hackathon on trying to make that TV work sooner. And that also creates the opportunity for accidents. Like the other day, they figured out that if you recapture CO2, you can run it through a fairly simple chemical process and then use it again. Mm-hmm. And then as we get better at getting more miles out of petrochemical things, that also adds another avenue for energy generation. What kind of things do you see out there or have you seen that are, like the next, oops, we invented vulcanization. Because we're in the lab doing things, these positive things come out.
Yep. Yeah, I think let me think about a good example from our customers. You see a lot of cross-fertilization of ideas, and Steve Jobs famously went to the Four Seasons and then took service ideas from that and brought them to the Apple Store. And I think we're seeing a lot of cross-fertilization in technology itself. It's maybe not as serendipitous as, say, the discovery of penicillin or something like that, but people are constantly out there looking at what other people are doing, and it creates this global feedback loop. I think digital transformation is a great example of that. When digital transformation came to marketing, think about what marketing was like before the internet. It was Super Bowl ads, and it was backs of magazines, and the quote from the Mad Men years was, "Half of my advertising doesn't work and half does work. I'm just not sure which half."
Right.
So now we have this age where every single step is tracked, every ad impression, every view, every click, every conversion, every download, all the way through to someone, making a purchase. And, that's a relatively recent development, and it's totally transformed the marketing pipeline. I mean, it's totally down to instead of I'll run a Super Bowl ad and see if it works, to, our cost per click just went from 4 cents to 6 cents, and I no longer want to pursue that channel of leads. So I think what people are doing with the internet is it's this global feedback loop of seeing what other people are doing or seeing a pattern and then transforming it and taking it to another place. I think that same level of transformation is going to come to R&D, where you have this, in marketing, you have this fully instrumented pipeline from lead all the way to a contract, and every little step is just oozing data out of it. And we have nothing like that in research and development. In research and development, you have people in white lab coats, and maybe they have a notebook, a physical notebook that they write in and stuff like that. But in the age of Twitter, when you can see who first tweeted something, or you know the exact moment that meme started, I think there's real potential to basically bring that level of tracking and quantification to that process. So, I think to answer your question directly, I can't think of a great example of our customers with that pure serendipity moment. I do think that tools like mobile app with a camera enables to capture those experiences in real time when they do occur. I think more than anything, we've created this massive global feedback loop where you have people looking at what other people are doing and reapplying it to a new context. I heard something about the startup scene in Iran the other day, and
really
all this stuff is out there on the internet, so they can learn about lean startup, they can learn about design thinking, they can learn, there's no reason they can't have a silicon desert or whatever they have over there.
There's probably an Uber in Iran.
Yeah, exactly. China's certainly been quick to replicate some of the things that work here. So, I can't think of a pure serendipity moment, but I think there's tons and tons of transporting things across different contexts and domains.
Yeah, absolutely. You were talking about the instrumentation of the innovation process, and we actually haven't really talked exactly about what Brightidea does or how Brightidea supports the innovation process, but I think that to some extent you're actually adding that reportability and tracking to what was before, guys in a white lab coat collaborating with each other.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, it's a very simple premise, is that we believe every innovation starts as an idea. So whether it's a way to save money or it's a way to make money, I guess I can back up by saying, what's my definition of innovation? My definition of innovation is doing something new that creates value. You have to have the invention side of it, but you also have to have the commercialization side of it, and the successful commercialization. So all innovation, in my view, starts as a new idea, and that idea needs to be brought to reality and turned into commercial value. So what Brightidea is basically started on that core principle, and we said, what if we could track ideas or innovations as effectively as FedEx tracks packages? So wherever they fly all over the world and they bounce between cities and all this other stuff, what if we could track all that? Then we could start to get a view into how the innovation's actually happening, because maybe someone comes up with a half-baked idea and someone else comes in and gives the other half that makes it something special. There's someone in your team that really knows a good idea when they see it, even when no one else can recognize it. So there's a famous management adage, you can't manage what you don't measure. And what we're trying to do is measure the core processes and say, where do these ideas come from? Who knows a good idea when they see it? How much did we invest in this? How much did it pay us back? How long did it stay in the pipeline? And we're doing that across multiple pipelines within the company. So if you have a suggestion box, that's the most basic thing. If you're running hackathons, if you're setting up a lean startup pipeline, if you're trying to solve a problem that you have through crowdsourcing, in all those cases, you're out looking for an idea, an insight, a new way of looking at the world, and then you have to vet that idea. You might start with lots and lots of ideas and sort of narrow the funnel down, and then use your subject matter experts to figure out what the best ideas are. And then you start to invest in these ideas and take them through to reality and track the financial impact. So that's really what we do. We're an innovation platform. We sell to innovation teams at companies. Primarily these teams are trying to take on new activities for the company, like hackathons or like setting up incubators or innovation labs, and they come to Brightidea for a tool to manage the activities that they're setting up.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Well, yeah, being in the space for now 16 years, you've probably seen a lot of change happen. So, what are some of the most prominent things that you've noticed change since you came to market 16 years ago?
You're not going to let me live that one down. A couple few grayer hairs back then, but yeah, I think people are getting real about innovation right now. For a while it was a buzzword. For a while it was sort of some people call it innovation theater. You do a hackathon, or you'd run a Shark Tank inside your company, and the main thing was to make everyone feel good, or sort of like a marketing thing. And now people are like, damn, like we've had like 0 interest rates for 10 years. Like there's been no growth for 10 years. Like, and competition's rising around the world. Like, like we need to get real about this. We need to get serious about this. So, that's the biggest shift. Is the budgets have gotten bigger, the teams have gotten bigger, the visibility has gotten greater. It's not like you can just mess around for a little bit and kind of run some experiments and see what happens. People are counting on these programs and these teams to deliver the next generation of growth to the company. So there's way more focus on data and metrics and what's in the pipeline, what's coming down the pipe. One of our companies, they found the CEO was kind of looking through the pipeline to find things to talk about in his speeches, right? Because he's like, I need to tell people we're innovating. So what do you got? Show me the database. So I think people are getting real about it. The budgets are getting real. They're appointing people. I think number 63% of companies now have a chief innovation officer. 73% now have a formalized innovation process and strategy. It's not a nice to have anymore. People realize this is sort of part of the core operating system for surviving in the 21st century.
Absolutely. It's either disrupt or be disrupted, right?
Absolutely. Don't get me started on disruption.
Oh, please. Let's start.
Well, the thing about disruption that I'm not sure, it's kind of a geeky thing, a term of art, or if you know the word shibboleth, but it's
another word for you to look up, Pete.
Yeah,
I know shibboleth.
So disruption. People who work in the field of innovation, they kind of cringe when people say disruption, because disruption can mean like a kid in a 3rd grade class with spitballs, right? And he's shooting them at the girl next to him, and he's being disruptive, right? And so everyone knows that definition of disruptive. And then people take that to innovation, and they say, well, when you innovate in a market, it's a disruptive force, right? It shakes things up. But what fewer people realize is that Clay Christensen, who wrote The Innovator's Dilemma, Harvard Business School professor, he actually coined this term, the theory of disruption. It's a much more sort of nuanced, specialized definition. It has to do with a new technology coming into a market and basically expanding the use of a particular technology or a particular benefit. I'm not doing a great job, but let me use an example. So photography at one point, when it first arrived on the scene, was very costly and very expensive, and you had to be an expert to do it. And you've seen those pictures of the guys with the blanket over their head, and they're exposing the film. As that sort of became more mainstream, people had SLR cameras with film, but it was still actually pretty challenging. You had to buy the film, you had to get it home, you had to shoot the things, keep it dark. You had to get it back to the drugstore. They mailed it off. Then it came back, and you got your like 24 photos. And if some of them were overexposed or something, you kind of just missed out on the moment. Now we have these smartphones, obviously, and the number of pictures taken every year is more than all the pictures of history, combined.
Wow.
Because people are just taking many, many more photos. And when you can look up online the picture of the first digital camera, and it's kind of the size of like 3 shoe boxes, and it actually has like cassette tape. They were recording the picture to a cassette tape. So when you look at that, you're like, oh, what's that ugly gargantuan thing? That's not going to change the world. But fast forward 20 years or 30 years, and all of a sudden Kodak's out of business. Right. They're closing plants around the world. Konica Minolta's had to pivot to other business models. Successful innovator, by the way. So disruption is a very specific form of innovation. It's actually a competitive strategy where you're taking a new technology and you're typically offering the same benefit to cheaper to a whole new set of customers. So there were sort of professional photographers and sort of amateur photographers, and then the digital camera just opened it up to like everyone's a photographer. And so you've grown the market. You've turned non-consumption into consumption for that activity. Technology was a trigger. And what Christensen said is when innovations fit this profile, he called them disruptive. I wish he had just come up with a better name because it creates all this confusion with TechCrunch Disrupt and all this crazy stuff. Right. typically when innovations follow that pattern, they're vastly more successful because there's an existing benefit that's understood, and it just sort of
and it's not necessarily a cannibalization of the previous industry or business.
Exactly right. And Salesforce.com is another great example. Siebel had this great business of selling multi-million-dollar CRM systems at the very high end of the market. Salesforce enters the market from the low end on cloud. They basically, create new consumption that people who weren't buying CRM can now afford it for a couple $100. And then Salesforce starts to creep up market and, disrupt the incumbent. There's more there. You can find a video from Christensen on it. But what happens is two things are really important. One, the new entrant is often more successful if they're disrupting an existing category, Clayton Christensen disruption. And the second thing is that the incumbent is sort of structurally prohibited from competing because they're sitting there going, why do we want that low cost, low margin business?
This is like taxis and Uber.
Yeah, exactly. It's not as good, and it's not as good until it is as good. So even Steve Blank says disruption looks like a toy on day one. And I think there's something to that. It's just one of those things that the innovation practitioners sort of cringe when somebody misuses disruption because it's this very specialized definition in our geeky world.
Right. Versus just blowing it up, which is kind of the way that I've looked at disruption in the past. It's just blowing up the old and coming in with the new.
Yep.
So when you have these old line companies and they're trying to have you guys help them innovate, are they in effect trying to disrupt themselves?
I think so. I mean, I think, definitely seen examples of that where another thing to look at in this pattern of disruption or the Christensen theory is that the thing that is ripe for disruption is something that's complex, expensive, requires expertise. Like those are the things that make something ripe for disruption. So any company that has sort of like a complex legacy system knows that they have to improve it. We work with a company called Sabre. They basically sell software for travel agents.
Right.
And they know they have to disrupt themselves. They know they have to change, how they're doing business. Maybe it's less providing services for someone who sits at a desk as a travel agent. Maybe it's creating a great search engine. So they're doing all this stuff, hackathons and incubators to try and come up with those new ideas to take the company to the next level.
Yeah. I wish them good luck.
They're doing good.
That's good. Look them up online. Do you ever get a company that's you're just like, oh, it's too late. It's too late for you.
I did tell you about the Honeywell guys.
Example.
That was rough. It's interesting as we peeled the onion on this, and because we have data, we can really start to diagnose what the problems are, right?
Right.
So a lot of people work in companies and they say, we're not innovating as much as we should. Or, imagine walking into a big company and just saying, raise your hand if you think the company's getting the most out of you in terms of your creativity and innovation potential. And you'd be surprised if 10 or 20% of the people raise their hand.
Yeah. What are the keys to success for innovation that you've seen across the board?
Oh, well, the one thing that we found through the data that I thought was really, really interesting, we sort of came at it indirectly, was employee engagement is really, really important, because if nobody cares about the company, if no one cares about the mission of the company, why are they going to help? I can cash my paycheck whether I give you an idea or not.
This is right. Like you're talking my language now, and this is where I want to know, like, how do you affectuate?
Sure.
Right. And if this is because cultural dissonance is hard to see, and those are keys. These guys were like, they got divorces and tax bills, and they're like, you know what I care about? Not this.
Yep.
Yep.
It's funny. We had a major financial services company come in, and we were like, oh, let's get started. Let's do this. Let's do some problem solving, or let's do a hackathon. And the lady was like, hold on, and we're like, what's up? And she's like, we're not going to do that. We'll just do something more subtle than that. Let's just get people talking about a topic or something. And I was like, no, we need ROI. We need this. And she's like, look, you got to understand, we've had layoffs. We've had a massive financial crisis. Our culture is in tatters, and we need to just get people back to the table. We need to get people re-engaged and talking. And it was a real insight. It's one of those learning moments you learn from your customers, which we try to do all the time. But that's
some advanced cultural thinking too. I mean, that's not common. Most people talk about culture and communication at the same level of depth. They're like, we need culture. Yep. You have to be a good communicator. but where's the depth?
Yeah, I agree. I mean, the one of the activities I don't mean to keep coming back to our software, but it's what I do all day. So
That's okay. You can talk about it.
One of the things we have is just a discuss app, and it's basically a place where people can just have a conversation, and it's not tied to driving ROI, or it's not tied to getting a patentable innovation or something like that. It's really just how do we foster a conversation. So a big company like Cisco might they'll host a conversation on Internet of Things, and they just want everyone talking about Internet of Things because they realize it's going to change their business, and it needs to be top of mind. And what's interesting is without a platform like this, the CEO can give a speech and everyone's on the conference call for an hour, and then everyone goes back to their day job. But what's cool about a platform like this is the CEO gives the speech, people absorb it, and then they push something back. So the minute they submit something back, you've round tripped the whole. You've completed it. They didn't just have the thing on mute while they were cooking dinner or something like that.
Yeah, you've engaged them.
You've engaged them, and so we can actually quantify engagement, and we get down to like the details of which teams and departments are talking to each other. Cross collaborative across silos. That's a really interesting data point for these people, and then geographically. So we'll put up a map and we'll say, where are these people talking? Is it going on in South Africa? Is it going on in Mumbai? Is it going on in Berlin? So, and of course the CEO likes that. He's like, look at everyone talking about what I told them to talk about. So, but those things can be really helpful because there's not a lot of pressure. There's not a big, barrier to entry. It's just, what do you think about the Internet of Things, or what do you think about the future of financial services, or how may blockchain or Bitcoin transform our business? And these are softer things. They may not lead to an actionable innovation, but it's really key to sort of get that core engagement initially. And I think human beings want to be on a mission. I think they want to be engaged. I think they want to be on a team where everyone's pulling in the same direction. So if you can give them something, you can give them a North Star or a guiding light. They're looking for it, but you gotta give it to them, and you gotta give them some time to think about it and internalize it. And then if they come to the table for that, then you can throw some bigger challenges at them, like a hackathon or some problem solving or stuff like that.
Just, I think, showing that you're listening and that you care, right?
Yeah. And that you're all in it together. It's like so many times these fiefdoms and silos and all this other stuff. It's like, hey guys, like, we're here because we make the only reason a company gets created is because people agree that their lives will be better working together than separately, and it sort of just reminds people that. And now we have all this outsourcing, these global spanning borders and all this other stuff. You don't have as much water cooler as you once had. Some people might sit on a floor where no one on their team is on that floor, and all their interactions are virtual or they're at home. So I think we need new tools, sort of, Facebook, but for inside a company, that can reconnect these people and reconnect the people who have common interests and want to work together on new and exciting problems.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, because new and exciting is kind of defined by the boss, and if no one, gosh, I can't remember his name. The guy that runs the UN right now, the Korean dude, he's like, I tried to lead by example, but no one followed. Like, you have to have. I'm huge on this. Like, you have to measure affect. Sounds like you guys are doing that, because if you don't, the effect really doesn't matter, because you can be tricked into believing that your effect is working positively, but no one gives a damn. You know.
Yep.
So it's a clever way to measure that. I dig that. And getting the CEO to buy into that, think about their response. They love it. You've got an emotional response. Yep. The response back is evocative as well, and that's like a cultural loop. That's really super positive.
Yeah, and we do things down deeper in the organization too. So if somebody participates in a challenge, ideas do go through experts or for evaluation. We give that feedback back to the submitter, and we say, look, we're not going to use your idea. You kind of came in the 75th percentile of all the ideas we looked at. But here were the areas you did well, and here are the areas you didn't do well. So you're actually cultivating these people over time. And so, yeah, I mean, it's really, Sandra keeps ripping on me for being around for 16 years, but there's some really subtle, sort of psychological factors here. And some of that's tactical, like, should we send another email because they haven't responded yet? Or there's some really emotional aspects to this, and it's not just a technology play, which is what makes it fascinating for me. I mean, it's like, you know, you have to manage this sort of melange of technology and people and design and mix that all together, and if you do it, like, magic happens, and if you don't, you at least have data on why the spark didn't take. So it's an amazing job to have, and we've got great people here working on it, so it's just awesome to come to work every day.
I can attest to that. Definitely a lot of magic happening here. Yeah. And I think that, you know, from my time here, what I gained was that it really, unlike many other places that I've worked, it felt like a family. I still feel like I'm part of the family.
You are part of the family. You don't ever leave a family.
You said melange, shibboleth, and affection.
I know. And my marketing people would say, don't talk in big words. You're not that cool.
I love it.
It's just what comes into my head. I'm sorry.
No, don't be sorry. I think it's fantastic.
Last question that I have is, well, I think that in common we have a love of going to Burning Man when we can, and the startup scene and San Francisco in general has, you know, a lot of people that like to attend this event. What do you think it is about Burning Man that gets people so excited, and how does that impact the startup world and creativity and innovation?
Oh, that's a big one.
Is it a big one? And are you bringing this rocket to the playa?
That was actually inspired by the rocket on the playa. We tried to get
yes.
They did a 40-foot rocket, and I actually called that camp to try and bring it to our user conference.
Oh my God.
But it was like right around Burning Man, so they couldn't do it. But yeah, the whole thing was inspired by them. But yeah, you know, Burning Man it's such a tough experience, because if I'm going to sound like one of those people, but if you haven't been there, it's hard to explain. I'll leave it at that. But you know, to me, you know, there's always this dream of, like, if the robots did all of our work, could we just sit around and hang out and make music and write poetry and all this other stuff? I don't believe that's possible, because I do believe there's something innate in us that likes to work, likes to push things forward, likes to, even if we automate everything we're doing today, there'll just be new things to do. Like when we automated all the farming, and now we all work at typewriters and computers and stuff like that. So what Burning Man is like, it's a little holiday that is like that moment. If we did automate everything, then we could all just, you know, do what we wanted to do for a week, and some really special stuff happens. And I don't know, to me, the most amazing aspect of Burning Man is that it's based on gifting. So you don't, I mean, you buy a ticket to get in, but after you get in, you don't have to pay for anything. You don't pay for your food or whatever, because everyone's gifting stuff. And when I first got there, I thought I had this great gift. I brought sunscreen. I figured, we're in the desert, everyone's gonna want sunscreen. No one wanted my sunscreen, and so it really set me back. And I was like, what's wrong with me? Like, why don't people want my sunscreen? And I realized the gifting is elevated to such a level. It's sort of like the NFL or the Olympics of gifting. Everything there is a gift. So when you go online, you see pictures, there's art sculptures, and there's food, and there's camps and music and amazing things. And because people are doing that as a gift, they're not trying to cut a corner. They're not trying to save a buck. They're not trying to, maximize their profit. They're like, this is my gift. This is an expression of who I am. I'm gonna invest in it. I'm gonna spend too much money on it.
Comes from the heart.
Yeah, exactly. So that's the thing. I think, everyone hears, oh, it's dusty and it's dirty and a bunch of hippies or druggies listening to techno music, which that's there too. I'm not trying to say it's not there. But what I found was it was a real opportunity to try and when I realized I needed a better gift than my sunscreen, I realized the only way to compete was to really evaluate myself and know what I could uniquely bring to this party, and think about who I was and what unique skills and capabilities I had, bring that and make that my gift. So that was really, really powerful for me. And I think that lesson, lasts long after you leave the playa. And I think in a way, we lose because it gets encumbered, but even what we do in our real life, Burning Man people call it the default world, but even what we do in our real life is giving our gift. What you guys are doing here with the podcast, and you've got all the tech worked out. She's got the great smile and the great laugh.
Well, not my smile. Screw this.
That was a mic drop for anyone not paying attention. No, I think that's what we're here for. And yeah, you got to make a profit. And yeah, you got to hire people and do the paperwork, and you got to do all the business as usual stuff. But But at the end of the day, we're here to give who we are, give our gift to the world. And if you can change that into a company, you can make that into a product. That's a really special thing. And I think Silicon Valley is a place where you can do those types of things.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
I don't want to say another word. That was great. That was fantastic. How do people find you on the internets?
On the interwebs, www.brightidea.com. We'd love to hear from you. If corporate innovation team or innovation manager are just thinking about getting one started, we'd love to have a conversation, see if we can't help you out.
Absolutely. And I could just talk on and on and on about this topic. So it's been a real pleasure having you on. Thank you so much, Matt.
Great seeing you guys. Thanks for coming by.